have a very wonderful task and also serious task here. Yeah, you handling with trafficking and you with corruption, a very big crime. Yeah, in everywhere and also in Indonesia. So isn't that scare you or anything as a woman
No,
to dealing with this
so.
sort of crime, a serious crime?
No, not at all. I think at the end of the day, we're all part of this experience called the human world, the world we live in, and every crime that gets committed, it might happen in one country, but the impacts could be seen across the world. And as much as we are so focused on what happens within our countries, everything is really transnational these days. And so it's very important that we approach these cases from that perspective, that as we help to build your capacity, ultimately that's going to help the U.S. down the road for crimes that cross those borders. And I can never be frightened about something from the perspective of being a woman, because I'm also a mother, so I'm going to defend my children. And so you kind of have to approach it from that perspective. So never frightened, never scared. Gives you a little bit more drive to really fight these cases more, because you don't want your family to be the victims. And so I think of all victims as being, treat them like they're your family. You're going to fight for them like they're your family.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to put it. Instead of a fear, it serves as motivation.
Motivation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what is your biggest challenge while you were in Jakarta?
Not knowing bahasa.
Yes, it's the language. It's the
So
language.
is there any requirement for you, like you have to learn bahasa or for 3 months, something like that?
So we both take classes.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, but it's only twice a week for 1 hour.
Online or
In person.
In person.
Yeah, so my bahasa is getting a little bit better, but not good enough to try and pretend on the podcast.
Not at all.
But it's getting a little bit better. But I think, like Tamika said, we rotate, and so you're never here long enough. I think if I was here maybe for 5-10 years,
Then it
I
would
would be able
make
to
a difference.
I would be fluent. But for a few years, it's not a long enough time.
Yes, at least you know a little bit word.
Yeah.
If you order some
Yes.
food from
Yes.
GoFood.
Yeah.
Or
Sobat Adhyaksa, dimanapun berada, kembali bersama kita kan selalu ada. Podcast Kejaksaan, menemani semua, hari-hari selalu penuh cinta dan cerita. Bahas apa saja, semua selalu ada. Konten tentang hukum dan serba-serbi lainnya. Mari kita semua dengarkan sesama. Podcast Kejaksaan selalu ada untuk kita.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Shalom, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan bagi kita semua. Apa kabar teman-teman Sobat Adhyaksa tercinta? Semoga kita semua dalam rahmat Tuhan selalu sehat-sehat dan tentunya kita selalu semangat. Nah, hari ini bertemu kembali dengan kami, host dadakan ya Mbak. Saya Henry dan Mbak Olive yang hadir di sini dengan nuansa baru. Biasanya ada Mbak Marcel untuk dalam podcast Kejaksaan. Iya, oh ya, Kak Marta juga. Nah, tidak seperti biasanya nih teman-teman. Hari ini kita boleh dong sedikit bicara dengan gaya baru nih, menggunakan bahasa Inggris, Mbak. Ya nanti tentunya bisa diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Indonesia oleh teman-teman yang ada di sini. Nah, baik teman-teman, hari ini tema kita apa ya Mbak Olive?
hari ini kita akan berbincang-bincang. Tamu kita ada dari tamu jauh. Tamu kita ada Ibu Tomika dan Ibu Kavita. Mereka adalah jaksa Amerika yang ditugaskan di sini. Hari ini kita akan ngobrol-ngobrol, kita akan belajar banyak dari teman-teman kita ini tentang bagaimana menjadi jaksa di Amerika. Dan mungkin ini bisa menambah pengetahuan kita.
Yeah, Bu Tomika, welcome. Bu Kavita, welcome. It is very nice to see you here today, and thank you for your time for being with us today. How are you? How do you do?
I'm doing really well today.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Terima kasih,
Yeah.
for inviting us
Yeah.
to the show. It's really an honor and a pleasure
Mhm.
on behalf of U.S. Department of Justice, who we represent here in country.
Mhm. And you, Bu Kapita?
Yep. Terima kasih banyak. We are very, very grateful for the invitation and very excited to be here on this podcast.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate your kindness because you make your time to hear. So we also thank you.
Well, the AGO has been a really long-serving partner with the Department of Justice for so many years. So we are excited to be here as the further evidence of that strong partnership and connection.
So
So,
how long? Well, I go with Ibu Tomika first. So
Yeah.
how long you been working here? So this is considered as the secondment posting, or
So I have been with the Department of Justice's overseas program for over 5 years now, but have been honored to be here in Jakarta working as a resident legal advisor for 10 months.
No, more
year?
than one. I
bit
think
more.
I arrived in September, so it's been 1 year for me. So
And I've been here since July, and it's
okay.
been 13 months then. So we've been here since 2023, serving in our capacities as resident legal advisors. But I served for almost 4 years previously in Kenya in a very similar position.
less than 1 year, but you guys already fluently using bahasa. Wow, great.
Sedikit.
Sedikit.
okay? How are you could be there?
I have been. This is my first international posting. So prior to this, I was a
Okay.
prosecutor in Chicago.
Okay.
And through meeting Ibu Tomika and our other colleague, Pak Bruce, I learned about the OPDAT program and coming
Okay.
overseas. And so this is my first time overseas as a prosecutor, and now it'll be almost exactly 1 year that I've been in Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since you say it's the first time, so how do you feel? I mean, is there any differences? I mean, do you get a privilege while you're here? I mean, after you finish your posting here and then you return back to Chicago, is that makes you easy to get promotion, or
It is a different type. It's a different kind of work because it is so focused on working with our counterparts at AGO and doing capacity building that some of the work does not directly translate, but because of our interactions with different types of prosecutors, different types of investigators, and with judges, those are skills that do help when you return back to your home office. And so I do expect that many of the skills here
will be useful?
will be useful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a very interesting when a prosecutor, you mainly daily handling a case, and one time you have to go abroad and learn about your fellow prosecutor in another country. So I mean, do you some kind of apply for this position, or there is some kind of selection to be able to work abroad of that? Yeah.
So the Department of Justice actually puts out, hiring positions for going overseas. So you have to apply just like you would any other job, and you have to go through an interview process if you're selected to go through the interview process.
How long it takes?
Well, it should only take about 3 months or so, but usually the process could take upwards to about 6 months. It depends on sort of the people who are part of that selection process, and then also sort of getting you to country can take quite a bit of time. But we have to interview. We have to go through 2 different layers of interviews in order to get selected for the positions.
So not every prosecutor can go to this position, yeah?
No. There are currently probably close to about 50 or 60 resident legal advisors or intermittent legal advisors across the world. So there's quite a few opportunities. They tend to try to bring individuals out who are experienced prosecutors within the Department of Justice, and sometimes they'll also reach out to local prosecution offices as well.
To give a little bit of perspective, I think similar to AGO, the Department of Justice has about 10,000 prosecutors. Yeah, so very similar to the AGO. And so of the 10,000 prosecutors, there are about 50 to 60 resident legal advisors in the world.
Is there any privilege, like they put more slot for female prosecutors? Or
Well, I think it's a pretty good split of the resident
It is.
legal advisors.
It is.
Yeah.
If you look at us, we're
Yeah.
2 out of 3 of the resident legal advisors here in Jakarta are women. And they also focus on diversity as well. We are probably the
Most
most
diverse.
diverse because we are all from different diverse backgrounds. I'm
Okay.
African American. Our colleague Bruce Mayaki is of Asian American
Wow.
descent.
Yep, and my parents are from India.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
great.
that's great. So anyway, what is the difference between Kenya and Indonesia? Do you find it's a bit difficult, or how long do you? I know it's totally different, right? So, what is your first impression when you arrive here in Jakarta?
So, my first impression is that it is much hotter here than in Kenya.
In what way?
So much hotter.
Much hotter in Jakarta?
Hotter. It's hotter in Jakarta than in Nairobi
Oh, okay.
because it's a little cooler there. So it's definitely hotter. But there are quite a few similarities between Kenya's legal system and Indonesia's legal system. Your legal system is very much driven from the bench. You have judges who rule on all of the evidence. They're able to ask questions of witnesses. Same thing in Kenya. It is all judge-driven decision making. They can ask questions as well. And unlike the U.S., we have a jury system. Which is very different. Whether it's a jury that makes decisions about whether charges are going to be issued, which we call a grand jury, or the members of the community that make up a trial, that make up the jury. So it's very different in terms of the U.S., but very similar in many ways to Kenya. But the weather's a little different, but just as hot. Traffic is very similar. But I have mastered driving here in Jakarta. Yes. The scooters can be a little bit challenging, but the traffic is very, very similar to Kenya as well.
And I've been in the car with Ibu Tomika. She navigates the traffic in Jakarta very well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You've got to be aggressive. You have to be aggressive.
Oh yes.
Definitely.
So can you name several street in Jakarta that already familiar?
Pop quiz.
Pop quiz. A street in Jakarta.
Yes.
Sudirman.
Sudirman. That's the.
That's the main street.
The main street.
You can take it anywhere.
Yes. Well, how about you, Kavita? Do you find how long do you find it's difficult to adapt from Chicago and Jakarta?
The work it's a hard comparison to make because the work is so different. Because my work in Chicago is probably very similar to your work here in that I had a very heavy caseload. I was managing different types of cases, working with different people, and here I have the luxury really of focusing on from program to program and working with 1 or 2 contacts and working we're a small office, and so working with our colleagues at Aptat, so Bakjut and Ibu Ade and Emily and Kia, so working with them in the office, it's a much smaller office, and so it gives me it's a luxury really that we are able to focus all of our attention on one program at a time. I do miss the courtroom, which so when I talk to prosecutors about their cases and working through trials and witnesses, I'm a little bit jealous.
Yeah, because it's an overlap.
Yeah,
Exactly. It doesn't leave just because you're overseas.
yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation when you ask your spouse, and then they feel like I'm not your defendant. Don't ask me questions.
Yes.
Because it's an outlet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It
I have
is.
friends, family who are always like, "Why are you cross-examining me?" And I was like, "I'm sorry. It comes naturally." Yeah, it comes naturally. Yeah.
Yes.
Although I will say, I did have my husband come and play the defendant at one of my
Serious?
programs.
Wow!
I think he understood more about what I do as a prosecutor and as well as what I do as a resident legal advisor, having gone through the experience. So
So you understand.
he understands.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It's
You
not
might want to
easy.
try that out with your partners. And probably understand your work
Yes,
better.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, and ready to your partner sleep in coats after the work.
Yeah, so they understand how hard it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe we should. Do you have any favorite food here?
Oh, favorite foods.
Nasi goreng.
Nasi goreng.
Sambal.
Sambal, lots
yeah.
of sambal.
She likes sambal.
Yeah.
How about you?
I've grown to really like satay, but
Satay.
I've had bakpia in Jogja.
Oh, bakpia.
Yeah. I have a sweet tooth, so wherever there is anything sweet, I really like the sweet things everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So I remember between me and my wife, we have a different taste of food. You know? She like a very sweet food, and I like spicy. Spicy. So whenever I go with her, I have to bring some ketchup sauce.
Yes.
ketchup manis.
Yeah,
Ketchup manis.
to make it sweet.
So make
Yes.
it sweet.
Ketchup mayonnaise has to be one of the most amazing culinary delights that just does not exist
It doesn't.
in America.
Yeah, we don't have ketchup
Do
manis.
not
Yeah.
have it.
Wow.
Even in Asian grocery.
I don't remember
think
seeing
so.
it. The sweet, ketchup anis. I don't think we have it, and it's great when you have like with like soup. With like when you have sambal and the ketchup manis to mixing it
Soto.
together, with soto,
Or just have some white rice and just drench
this
it
is making
in
me
ketchup
hungry.
mayonnaise.
Maybe we can go to the next canteen after this.
Yes, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
There would be no objection to that part. No objection.
Ketchup manis. So let's talk about your work here. How long you've been working? I mean, I know that OPDAT has a long history involved in our capacity building. So within this year, how many programs do you have with our office?
Oh, wow.
With the university?
Good question.
So basically, you are in charge in what kind of capacity building?
Good question. Thank you. My focus here in Indonesia has been on trafficking in persons,
Okay.
internet crimes against children, and counter wildlife trafficking.
Oh, I see.
And so I have been very lucky in that work has allowed me to travel around a lot of Indonesia. And so I've had multiple programs on trafficking in persons in the areas that Indonesia has identified as having many victims or places that are transit points for trafficking victims. And so I've had programs on TIP in Batam, NTT and NTB, in Makassar, but also been able to visit the prosecutors and judges and police in Manado, Palembang.
So what is your goal?
The goal in doing these programs, the goal is really what you all identify as the goal, because the reason I think that our relationship is so strong and is so has been so long standing is because we try at least to work with AGO to find out what it is you think you need or what you think that the prosecutors in the field need. And so this past 2 years, the thing that our counterparts and our colleagues in the CT Directorate have identified for trafficking in persons is applying for restitution.
Restitution.
And making sure that prosecutors know that if you charge under the trafficking statute, then the victims can receive restitution. And so as we all know, one of the reasons that victims fall into the trap of becoming trafficking victims is because of money, because they are living in impoverished situations, and this is the only alternative that they can see. And so if they have some money, something to help them recoup and to rejoin community, that will maybe help to prevent them from going back into a trafficking situation. And so socializing the idea that the restitution is allowed under the statute, helping them figure out how to calculate that restitution. So we work closely with LPSK to come help bring that message to the different regions where the prosecutors have the most cases.
Yeah, I would like just to ask, what is the main difference about trafficking and smuggling, people smuggling? Because in one side you can be also the person that committed a crime, and you can be also the victim. Yeah. What is the main difference between the people smuggling and trafficking in person?
Yeah. So the trafficking is one of the main differences is that you are tricked
Okay.
into that situation. So you, for example, we have seen in the news that there are hundreds of thousands, or thousands certainly, but maybe hundreds of thousands of people who are being trafficked to Southeast Asia, where they are lied to and told that they are going for some job that is very high paying, and instead they then end up in a country where the job is not the same. Their passport and their identification papers are taken from them, and then they are forced to work, and forced either by violence, forced through like sometimes food and water is withheld. Whereas with people smuggling, it is the movement of the people, and that without the proper papers, without the proper going through the proper regulations, and so you are there. The individuals want to move. They want to go to the different countries, but they are avoiding the regulations and the restrictions and the laws that allow for them to do that legally. With trafficking, it has the extra element of that the victim is either forced or is tricked into doing that. And with children, particularly children who are trafficked into sex trafficking and doing sex work, that in the United States and Indonesia, at least the way the law is applied, you do not have to show that you are lied to or tricked because it's a child. And so because we see children as needing protection from the government and or the government rather, to protect children. If they are moved from one country into another and put into that situation, that is considered trafficking.
Even if there is a consent from the victims?
Yeah, because I think the question is what did they consent to, right? And so if, for example, if I think that I'm taking a job to be a programmer in, I don't know, pick a country, right? If I think I'm taking a job to be a programmer in Cambodia. And then when I arrive, they say, oh, we're transiting first in Thailand, which happens a lot to victims, right? So they will go through from the airport from Indonesia, they will land in Thailand, and when they land, either before they leave here or when they land, your papers are collected, and then they are forcibly moved to other countries, and then placed in the most recent types of cases, they are placed in these large buildings where they are working with 20, 30, up to 100 other people who are also been smuggled from Indonesia, from Thailand, and then they are forced to commit fraud. So they're working on financial fraud cases, the romance schemes, where those victims are Americans and Europeans mostly, but the trafficking victims are Indonesian, Thai, and they're different now from the trafficking victims that we've used to seeing. They're now college-age students, so they're kids that are like they're able to speak English, they're able to work a computer, so they think they're going for a good job.
For a good job.
And then they end up in these situations, and that's not what they've consented to. They consented to leaving the country to go to this job, but they're lied to about what the end result is.
Olivia, just recently we are shocked with organ trafficking. You see some news when children, somebody take the organ and sell it because they have this information from internet. How do you think about this?
Well, I think that there are a lot of dangers with the internet. And there's a lot of regulations and a lot of focus that the U.S. has put into being able to stop the use of the internet for those purposes. But, generally speaking, when you have these type of cases, when they involve children in the U.S., they can't consent. They can't consent given their age. But it's really important that our communities start to regulate sort of how children are being exposed to certain things on the internet, so that they understand that if somebody is offering them a job or these opportunities that seem too good to be true, that chances are there's something that isn't quite right. But a large part of that also requires our communities to be aware of, where do you report this type of conduct? Who do you report it to? You know, there's a saying in America, if you see something, say something. So we have opportunities to report to our various different law enforcement agencies. Probably the Federal Bureau of Investigations is our leading agency when it comes to some of these cyber enhanced crimes or cyber enabled crimes, so that you can report any sort of interactions on the internet where there is a concern that someone is potentially going to be exploited. But organ trafficking is absolutely a prohibited conduct in the U.S. And generally everyone knows that you cannot sell an organ legally, and that there is a means of reporting that conduct.
Okay. Well, now we're back to Ibu Tomika. So what is you doing here?
So while Kavitha focuses on her 3 areas, I've been focusing heavily on corruption, money laundering, asset forfeiture in management, as well as narcotics, and court security. So I've had an opportunity to work very closely with AGO's Asset Recovery Center in terms of bringing them to the U.S. recently to engage with our U.S. Marshal Service on how they can better value as well as manage various different assets that are seized from various cases. I've also worked very heavily with the AGO Cybercrime Task Force, which Ibu Olivia, you serve on. And I would say the majority of my programs over the past year or so has been with the Cybercrime Task Force. And I think that has been led by the Jampidum. He has been a great champion for the Cybercrime Task Force. And so we've been able to share best practices from the U.S. on digital evidence and how we investigate cybercrime cases. And we've even traveled to the United States to talk with prosecutors and investigators and judges, some wonderful judges who are experts on digital evidence. And as Ibu Kavitha said, this was all driven by the AGO and what the AGO's needs were. And I think one of the highlights has been the execution of an MOU between the U.S. and with the AGO in supporting cybercrime efforts. And I'm excited for the progress that AGO has made and the importance that the AGO has focused on in terms of cybercrime and digital evidence. And we have a regional legal advisor who's focused on computer hacking, who's going to be working really closely with the Cybercrime Task Force moving forward. But most of my programs have all been based in either Jakarta. So I don't get to travel as much as Ibu Kavitha has been. But I do want to say that a large part of the work that we do here, whether it's Ibu Kavitha's work or my work or Pak Bruce, who focuses on terrorism and counterterrorism, we are really aided by a group of women who have been spectacular, and they have been a part of the Abdat family for years. We have Ibu Chut, who actually is here in the studio, who is one of the longest serving legal specialists for Abdat. She has been very integral in the work on the corruption area for so many years, and her expertise and her connections and relationships is what really kind of keeps our program moving, because we're only in country for a few years and then we get replaced by someone else. So Ibu Chut and Ibu Ade and Ibu Emily have been our continuity for all those years. So I do want to stress that we might be out here as the face of Abdat in country, but they are really the key to kind of keeping our programs moving and keeping connected to both AGO and all of the different criminal justice sector actors that we engage with. The glue. I think that's a really good way of explaining that. Yeah.
You guys have a very wonderful task and also serious test here. Yeah, you handling with trafficking and youth with corruption. It's a very big crime. Yeah, in everywhere and also in Indonesia. So isn't that scare you or anything as a woman
No,
to dealing with this
so.
sort of crime, a serious
No.
crime?
No, not at all. I think at the end of the day, we're all part of this experience called the human world, the world we live in, and every crime that gets committed, it might happen in one country, but the impacts could be seen across the world. And as much as we are so focused on what happens within our countries, everything is really transnational these days.
Yeah.
And so it's very important that we approach these cases from that perspective, that as we help to build your capacity, ultimately that's going to help the U.S. down the road for crimes that cross those borders. And I can never be frightened about something from the perspective of being a woman, because I'm also a mother, so I'm going to defend my children. And so you kind of have to approach it from that perspective. So never frightened, never scared. Gives you a little bit more drive to really fight these cases more, because you don't want your family to be the victims. And so I think of all victims as being, treat them like they're your family. You're going to fight for them like they're your family.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to put it. Instead of a fear, it serves as motivation.
Motivation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what is your biggest challenge while you were in Jakarta?
Not knowing bahasa.
Yes, it's the language. It's the
So
language.
is there any requirement for you, like you have to learn bahasa or for 3 months, something like that?
So we both take classes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. But it's only twice a week for 1 hour.
online or
In person.
In person.
Yeah. So my bahasa is getting a little bit better, but not good enough to try and pretend on the podcast.
Not at all.
But it's getting a little bit better. But I think, like Tomika said, we rotate, and so you're never here long enough.
Yeah.
I think if I was here maybe for 5-10 years,
Yes.
Then it
I
would
would be able
make
to
a difference.
I would be fluent. But
Yes.
for a few years, it's not a long enough time.
Yes, at least you know a little bit word.
Yeah.
If you order some
Yes.
food from
Yes.
GoFood.
Yeah.
Or, I want to know, what is your favorite cities in Indonesia?
Oh,
So,
For works and for holidays, well.
work and holiday. Okay.
so I've been to Bali,
Okay.
and so I have to say I do like Bali.
Yes.
But I've only been to Nusa Dua. But
Nusa Dua.
so I
Oh,
stayed
yeah,
in Nusa
yeah,
Dua, and it was very nice and it was very quiet. But next time we go to Bali, which is just in about 2 weeks, we're going to stay in Kuta.
Good.
Kuta. So it's a little bit more bustling, a little bit more opportunities. And I've also been to Bogor and Bandung. And I have to say, the food in Bandung is incredible. And so I've really enjoyed Bandung. And going out to some restaurants at night and a little bit of nightlife, a little bit of music playing. That was a really, really fun experience. So I would say the music in Bandung, and I also experienced a little bit of music in Samarang.
Samarang, yeah.
Very good cities. But Kaviva has gone to a lot more interesting places.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot, but I think Jogja is my favorite
Jogja.
city. Yeah, I like
Because everything is sweet there.
everything. The food is a little bit manis, yeah. But I like it has a young feeling to it, maybe because of all of the universities. It's very vibrant. It's easy to walk around.
Yes.
So I like the city. So doing the work in Jogja has been very fulfilling. I really like that city. To travel for personally, Labuan Bajo has been my favorite. Yeah, I learned how to scuba dive when I arrived in Indonesia. So actually, just recently I was scuba diving in Labuan Bajo, and it's amazing. I saw manta rays and turtles and sharks, octopus, all sorts
octopus.
of yeah.
And you have some great photos with the Komodo dragons too.
Yes,
So
the Komodo
Kaviva
dragon
has those.
Yeah, so it's amazing that you can go from like big giant cities like Jakarta and Surabaya and Jogja, and then you go to smaller places like Labuan Bajo, such a small little city.
Everything's different.
And there's the environment, like the things that you can see in nature I think the environmental resources and sort of the natural resources that Indonesia has are one of its greatest treasures. I think it's really one of your strengths, like the wildlife and the seas and the forests and all of the different types of things that you can see in one country is truly phenomenal.
Well, Tomika, I think one of the Ibu Kavita recommendation, we should have a program in Labuan Bajo.
Yes.
I think we're going to have to try to make that happen.
I
say yes.
Bu Tomika, Bu Kavita, your face is not like just when people can misrecognize you as a Japanese people rather than American. You know, do you have that some kind of experience in Indonesia when people misrecognize you as maybe as Japanese people, or you from Ambon actually, and people talk to you using Japanese or using bahasa?
Yeah.
That has happened a couple of times. So I've been to court, and I've been approached from a number of folks who thought I was from Papua. So that has actually happened in court, and I had an interpreter who was present, and they were able to explain that I'm from the U.S. And that also has happened to us out when we've been out at one of the malls. And we've had individuals come up and speak to us in Indonesia, me and my family. But every single time we'll start talking, and then all of a sudden, like, wait, that doesn't.
The accent gives
that
away.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
So, is it difficult to be a prosecutor in United States? What is the requirement to be a prosecutor?
So for the U.S., you have to go through a university.
Yep.
Got to have
Law
at least
school.
4 years of college, and then you have to go through law school. The general route is law school.
And then law school.
So 4 years of university, 3 years of law school, and then you can then apply to go into a prosecutor's office. Usually at the state or the local level, you can enter into those positions without any prior experience. We work for the Department of Justice, so at the federal level, they typically require you having some experience before you can apply for those positions. And so then when you become a prosecutor, there's some level of training. Not much, but you're kind of, it's similar to AGO. You get the job, you go through some training, but you start working right away. And so that's generally the path. After you graduate from law school, you can go down different paths. So some individuals will go government service. You can clerk for judges, and sort of stay within that government service realm, including becoming a prosecutor. And then the other option is to become a defense attorney or a civil attorney. And then obviously those two paths aren't ones that you are required to stay in. So you can later become a judge if you wanted to. Judges typically have significant experience as an attorney or a prosecutor before they go that route. So that's very different here from Indonesia, because you have the three paths, and you've got to make a decision, and you must stay down those paths, right? So it's a little different in the U.S.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest difference.
Yes.
Difficulty-wise, I think the same sort of challenges that we face in the U.S. you all face here. The workload, lack of resources. So I think we have to work very hard, and I think it is done out of a sense of duty and a sense of passion for the work, passion for the victims. So you are willing to work on weekends, willing to work long nights, long days, and be away from family to do the work. So I think that is one of the challenges, and I think because you're not in private practice, so we, as Tomika said, we could leave government service and go to private practice and make far more money. But we choose to stay in government service out of, I think I find it very rewarding. One of the coolest things about my job is going to court and saying Kavita Babu on behalf of the United States.
It is that first moment when you say it.
It's still actually, I just got goosebumps.
The first moment is so powerful.
So that,
and I actually started in private practice. So I took a half my salary was cut.
Yep.
Going
Wow.
from private practice to government.
Yeah.
So you don't make as much money,
Yeah.
but there are quite a bit of benefits, I think,
Yeah,
from being a prosecutor. One, I think that the training that we do get is pretty good. I mean, it's remarkable the way that particularly the Department of Justice has really focused on beefing up training, enhancing it. I think there's more life-work balance, so you're able to spend more time with your family and to enjoy life a little bit. When you worked in private practice, you were constantly traveling and working very,
Because
very
you have
long
clients.
hours. Yes. And those clients, when they have needs,
Oh,
know.
No one else matters.
No one else matters.
Yeah.
Bu Kavita and Bu Tomika, maybe last question, Mbak Olive.
Yep.
How do you see about the restorative justice program here in Indonesia? Because it's kindly new for us, maybe not new in America, but our Attorney General have this strong commitment, just not to use conscience in applying the law, not only by books. How do you see this restorative justice now in Indonesia?
I think restorative justice is absolutely the way to go. We've been doing restorative justice in the U.S. for decades. We refer to it as diversion, a way to take individuals who have been either arrested by the police or cases have come to the prosecution for consideration of charges, trying to get them out of the system. And it's really important for many reasons. Oftentimes individuals just make poor decisions because of the situations that they're in. We know that many crimes are committed because individuals are seeking they are struggling just to get by. Individuals who are stealing from stores just to put food on their in their children's stomachs. And those are not the individuals that you want to punish. Those are not the ones that you want to put into jail. You want to give them that opportunity so that they can turn their lives around and make better choices and to demonstrate that they can be productive members of society. And so in the U.S., we have been really looking at different areas where we want to give second chances. It's not just in terms of individuals who've committed their first offense or even minor offenses. We even look at issues in terms of mental illness, individuals who've made decisions and committed crimes because of the state that their minds were in at the time. So we look at diverting cases or giving opportunities for individuals who've been mentally ill or who have suffered from substance abuse addictions. So, because we know that there are certain criminals for which our system is really built for. Those are the transnational organized crime perpetrators, narcotics traffickers, individuals who are committing crimes that we really do need to focus our energy on. We need to find ways to make those individuals who are committing those minor offenses, giving them a second chance. So I think the restorative justice program that the Attorney General is really championing is a really impactful one. And I had an opportunity to actually go and see one of the restorative justice programs. I believe it was in Batam. And we saw how a young man just married, his wife was pregnant, had gotten a sepeda motor and had received it. It was stolen, received it just so he could go out and earn money to put on the table. But luckily, the Attorney General's office saw this case, applied restorative justice. What I love about restorative justice is the fact that it brings victims and the perpetrators together. So that it gives a victim a voice, and they're being heard. They're getting compensated. There is no sense of like, we're going to give you a get out of jail free card, but the victim isn't made whole. But the victim is made whole. They have an opportunity to reconcile with one another. It was a really fantastic resolution program that we had a chance to witness, and it demonstrates where the AGO's office is. You are, I think, ahead of the pack on restorative justice here in Indonesia.
Yes.
Very good.
But maybe
Well, I think that's all for me.
Yeah.
It's really great to have both of you here. Well, I hope that you will always succeed. And I heard that you will be, and you're posting here.
I do. I return back to Chicago at the end of the year.
We're very sad. We are so sad.
Very sad.
I am sad to leave, and I'm sad to leave the relationship with the AGO. But I really do miss being in court.
Oh yes, I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah, I'm jealous of prosecutors when they talk about trial. So,
But hopefully we'll see her again. Something tells me that the person who's taken over your portfolio is going to be bringing her back.
yes. So hopefully this will not be the last time you see me.
Oh, is there a second, terms? You can work in one country?
Yes, you can actually work in one country and then move to another. So I've done that. I worked in Kenya and now I'm here.
And you can also back to Kenya?
Yes, if the position was available and I get selected after 2 interviews, yes. After going through that. But we hope that Kavitha will be able to come back for programs.
Yeah.
Because that's where we bring all of our experts from, is from the US.
Well, so always happy.
Oke, terima kasih teman-teman semua. Jadi jelas apa yang tadi disampaikan Bu Tomika dan Bu Kapita, ternyata tidak mudah untuk menjadi seorang penegak hukum ya. Kita butuh bukan hanya pengetahuan tapi juga rasa keadilan. Itu yang susah karena Pak Jaksa Agung mengatakan tidak semuanya bisa dibaca di buku, Mbak Olive. Nah, jadi terus teman-teman, kita semangat dimanapun kita bertugas, terus tunjukkan sisi humanis dari jaksa di Indonesia, tantangan kita semua sehingga akhirnya masyarakat mengenal hukum dan menjauhkan diri dari hukuman. Terima kasih, sampai bertemu kembali dalam podcast Kejaksaan yang berikutnya, tentu dengan narasumber yang beda. Terima kasih teman-teman semua.
Sampai jumpa.
Sampai jumpa. Can you say goodbye to that camera?
Yeah.
Bu, ya.